This is the one that I have the most kind of maybe pushback on. So curious for your thoughts. So the final point is move as fast as possible once you have the right one. People want to feel wanted. Time is typically interpreted as disinterest, even if that's not actually accurate. So he says, in order to kind of reduce that level of fear or friction, move as fast as you possibly can and give clarity about next steps, etc.
Initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley. Welcome back to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is a show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today we've got a great trending topics episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days like today, we cover trending topics. Stop by every Tuesday for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. And occasionally you get a mic drop episode from Matt where he shares something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. Now, as a reminder, if you like the content that we share here on the show, make sure that you subscribe for more. All right, today's trending topics. We haven't had one of these in a little bit, Lex. We were doing the ABP series, so what you got for us this week?
Yeah, well, actually, technically, it's more of a what have you got for us this week? Because Sam sent me a LinkedIn post that he thought was interesting, and we both decided this would be a great trending topics episode. So you're really supplying all the material here. They say AI is going to steal your job, but I think Sam is going to steal your job.
If only I could clone myself. I would pay a lot of money to have two of me.
I would pay a lot of money to have two of you also, honestly. But yeah, so the post was, I just love the way it was written. It was a hilarious post, definitely not written by AI. And those are always fun. They're a novelty in the LinkedIn feed these days. So anytime you see a non-AI generated post, it's always a pleasure. So this one came from Jordan Mazer, who is a partner at A16Z. Basically, the premise of the post is, he says he led a 70-person recruiting team, has hired thousands of engineers throughout his career, and basically is providing a list of tips and tricks in his own funny voice as far as how to do outbound sourcing well. So what could be more relevant or practical for us to get into in our time together than that? So ultimately wanted to just go one by one through his list of, I think it's 5 items, and just kind of chat through what his advice is and then kind of our perspective on it.
Love it. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So let's get into it. Number 1, his first point is simply get good at email, which yeah, love it. He expounds upon that a little bit, basically saying some tips as far as using the prospect's personal email, never using LinkedIn InMail, making the subject line about them and not a basic, just kind of generic thing, declaring your intent very early on, and making sure that 90% of your message is about them, i.e. the candidate, and not about yourself. So talking more about why you're impressed with them than talking about the job itself, than talking about yourself. So yeah, that's his first tip, is get good at email.
Yeah, I like it. I know there were a few more. I do want to hit on these ones after, but we'll almost consider it this is the first half. This is just the 101, the basics, what you should be doing no matter, if you do this, it will land decently. If you do the next stuff that we'll get to in a minute with it, that's what takes it over the top. That's how you really stand out. So yeah, use the prospect's personal email. Duh. I mean, yeah, definitely don't send it to their work email. Everyone listening knows that. It was interesting that he called out InMail though. I wonder if that has to do with, he was talking about the developer market. There's obviously ins and outs of know your niche, know where your people spend their time, but email is gold, as everyone says and knows. So I like that one. Declare your intent. That was an interesting one. And I wonder if it has to do with the way that he presented it, because he had a little bit more context here. He says, I think you fit for our team versus I have a great opportunity for you. Both are communicating roughly the same thing, but there's that intent behind it. It's I have this for you versus I think you fit for, I don't know. There's just something about this, they see something in me versus, I don't know. Yeah. It's a weird verbiage thing there, but it lands better. What do you think? You're the copywriter by trade.
Yeah. I mean, I think you fit for our team does a great job of one, implying a level of knowledge about this candidate that goes beyond just their experience, but like a culture perspective. Like, I think you would fit in here. It's very inclusive, and it's also very like, yeah, it communicates very subtly that I know you and I think this would be a good fit for you and that you would be a good fit for it. So I think it's, yeah, very simple but clever the way that that is positioned. And I see how, one, yes, it declares intent, but it also communicates knowledge and understanding. And I think that that is what makes it really powerful.
Yeah. And then rounding it up with just 90% of the message should be about them.
Yep. Yeah,
That's
and then
a
in
gut
all
check
caps,
to a lot of us.
all caps, he says, "Do not talk about yourself. Do not link job descriptions. Seriously, stop WTF." So, really, really doubling down on that.
Yeah, that's the back half of it. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's hilarious in itself. And he also says, like, humor helps most of the time. That's one of his other points in there. Yeah, being a human, again, it's like, yes, we have Outreach GPT as our product, but I will go to the grave saying, do not send out what Outreach GPT spits in. That's a starting point. Like, go add the other stuff to it, like humor, anything else that shows your person at the end of it. But the final point, and he sneaks this in there, is ... sell a conversation, not the job. And so I know this is about sourcing candidate. It applies equally to biz dev, but don't try to land the job. Don't try to make the hire on this call. Like, what you're trying to do is just, I want to have a conversation with you. How do I get them to just open engage? Like, okay, yeah, I'm open to hearing you out. Like, that's all you're aiming for with this. Don't get too far ahead of yourself here.
Yeah, I know. This is one where I'm like, I have a lot of thoughts on just this concept of sell the conversation, not the job. Because on the one hand, it's like, yes, I'm totally bought into the ethos of that. But then on the other hand, we have to acknowledge the fact that, in-demand candidates are getting a ton of messages. They're getting, bombarded with a lot of spam. So there is this element of how do we find like the happy medium between starting to develop an actual relationship that goes beyond and outside of this job and have like really is about a real conversation, while also understanding that people are very busy and sometimes justifying a conversation given their time can be really, really difficult. And so how do you make sure that you really lead with value and make sure, yes, you're communicating a level of knowledge about the person and about, how you do believe they could be a good fit, while also not going too far into that salesy direction of like, here's a job, you've got to take it. Like, that's all this is about. And so I think it is like, it's about finding balance there. Obviously he's being, super bombastic with like his delivery. So it's not as do or die maybe as the way that he's presenting it, but I do think there's some nuance there to consider. That's all.
Yeah, I like it. Okay,
so yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
you go.
No, I think you're gonna answer my question here.
I was just going to say one more thing, which is when it comes to outreach in general, I think it is so important to just remember, you already said, be human, but another good test in my opinion is the would you say this in person rule. Like, would you talk to, if this job came, you're pitching this job and you're talking to someone at a party, how would you talk to them about it? Would you be talking all about yourself and your skills? Would you be talking all about the job itself? Or would you be trying to get to know this person and understanding how they could be a good fit? So adhere to the would you say this in person rule always when it comes to email.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because it's in person. It's almost like you're doing the discovery call, so to speak. You're trying to understand, are they a good fit, sussing it out, versus over email, it's less discovery and more almost like you're just trying to shove it at them and force them into it. So that I like that subtle reframe. That's a good one there.
Yeah, it's the way that I think, the way that I've been thinking about email in general lately, just because all of my inbox is stuff that I don't want to read. So got to think of how to switch things up a little bit. Okay, so moving on to point number 2 that he makes. It is, you need to contact way more people than you think. He says a good response rate is above 20%. A good interested response rate is above 10%. And then really only a fraction of the people who even take that call will be a great fit for the job. So his recommendation is 50 outreaches per day for most roles, which sounds like a lot. And I think like the caveat here is it has to be good outreach. We talk a lot about email deliverability, and I think we need to just definitely qualify this statement with that. Like, make sure that you are sending good outreach, the quality of the emails themselves, but then also just like that you're doing your due diligence from a deliverability standpoint. And just a subtle plug, we do have a guide to email deliverability on our website, which I will link in the show notes. It's very comprehensive, pretty much everything you would need to know about as a recruiter. How do you have good email just hygiene? And then we also have an upcoming webinar on this topic. So lots of resources that are available to recruiters when it comes to email deliverability.
Good stuff. I like that he has those numbers there too for benchmarks. And again, obviously, this is going to skew by industry, by title. But once you, like, the important takeaway here is he's done this a lot. He recruits a specific type of role. He knows his numbers. He knows what he needs to do to be successful. Figure that out for you. And that's the big takeaway.
Yeah. And I think that you and Viv have talked about this on Tactical Tuesday before, but like almost backing yourself into those benchmarks. I think there's a lot of different ways that you can create a good matrix for yourself that really does give you, okay, if I reach out to this many people per day and I get this number of response rates, I'm likely to get X number of qualified candidates in the pipeline. So
exactly.
Yeah. Tweak it to your liking. Next, number 3 is, I like this one a lot. He says people are most honest at the outset, so take advantage of that honesty. Basically, his whole hypothesis is the further a candidate goes into the process, the more they actually want the job, which makes sense. And people who want something are much more likely to kind of covet that thing and do whatever they need to do to get the thing that they want, which might mean fudging a couple of things, kind of being a little bit loose with the truth or the facts. And so he's basically saying, hey, the stakes are low on that first call. They're not bought in on it yet. So try to use that call to get as much honesty out of them, to get the most clear picture about the candidate and their qualifications as possible, because you're less likely to get that later on. An interesting thing that I haven't really heard people talk about before.
That is some serious human psychology right there.
Yeah.
I love it. It's so true when you think about it, though. Like, and that's where I think why recruiters love the role so much is there's this creative human psychological element that, like, this is a puzzle that's forever trying to be solved here. So knowing that little bit, though, and how to figure out what are the right questions to ask, where, if I offered you $500,000 for this job, would you take it? Yes, no, okay. Pay as a driver, pays not a driver. Like, you can figure out your core questions there, but that's an interesting one. I like that. Now, I'm already starting to think about this now. Okay, I'm not going to side rail us.
I do think it is interesting too, because I think there is this tendency to almost like dance around facts and numbers and all of that stuff on both sides early on, because no one wants to the elephant is in the room, but no one wants to address it. And so I think that kind of getting ahead of that, it reminded me a lot of in a recent episode of the podcast when we had Jen Allen Newth on. Like, she talks about friction is inevitable. It's going to happen at some point in the process. So doing what needs to be done to like kind of not be surprised by that, I think is really helpful, and just kind of make sure that you've got what you need ready to go, and you're expecting that friction rather than having it happen way further into the process when you've already invested a ton of time and resources into it.
Yeah, like comp expectations, remote expectations, all those things.
Deal breaker type things that, like, if you had known them sooner, it probably would have influenced both of your behavior and how much you want to engage. So the fourth tip that he says is, in all caps with 3 exclamation points, stop talking. God made you with 2 ears. Use them. Again, very clearly not written by AI. If you want to make sure people know that something you've written had no AI element to it, just use a lot of all caps and exclamation points. That's one way to do it. So basically, he expands upon this point by saying, like, people love to talk about themselves because it feels safe to them. In a 30-minute call, the candidate should be talking for 27 of them. He says that you should be asking good questions, and he defines that as hot ones level quality. And I love that as a metric of success, is like, could this question be asked on hot ones? The goal with your question should be to figure out what they care about. And then basically he says, then use your 3 minutes to deliver a supremely tailored pitch to that specific candidate. And I love that mentality of like pitch in those last 3 minutes, because you had this opportunity to really gather information. Now you can customize your pitch based off of what you know about the candidate and what they value and care about. So I love that point. This
Yeah.
number 4 is great to me.
Yep. And this is something sales reps know very well is don't just jump in and sell your product. Don't get into features because they might not care about 90% of what you share, and you might glaze over the one thing they do care about. So yeah, that's a hot ones quality. I'm cracking up at that. Yeah, I mean, those final 2 things, honestly, it's just to figure out what they care about. So like what you and I were saying earlier, use this initial time to figure out what are their core drivers, what are the different reasons that they might be open or not open to something, and then wrap it up. Show you listened. The 2 years concept of if you did a good job, if you set this up for success, they told you all about themselves, what they care about, what they might be looking for, why they might not be a good fit, why they might be a good fit, all of that, but tie a bow on it with, okay, like here's the pitch at the end of it. Here's what I know you care about. Here's why I think you'll be successful in it based on XYZ that you covered. So I know I've never followed this rule as I've recruited people. I'm trying to think. I'd love to say like, oh, my best candidate, Lex, who I recruited, we followed this exact journey. It's like, no, we didn't at all. But it would be interesting for people that are listening to apply this afterward and see what the difference is between the outcomes of calls, how you felt about it, your conversion rates along the funnel, and then doing this after from that initial just kind of like email to screen to, okay, let's get them into the process now.
Yeah. No, and I think a really good thing like this, it's easy to say, yeah, of course, ask good questions. That's easy. Like we should all be doing that. But I think like really defining and understanding what is the anatomy of a good question? Like, how do you know if a question is good? You can kind of test that by the quality of answers that you're getting. If the answers are not revealing as much to you as you hoped that they would, maybe that's not a good question. I think a lot of people ask leading questions without realizing it. They ask like questions that really are kind of a binary yes or no, but are just phrased differently. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to ask more open-ended questions that genuinely give the candidate room to answer them in ways that might reveal something to you. So genuine curiosity, I feel like goes a long way, but so often we're trying to kind of lead a candidate in a direction to get the answer that we think we want from them. And so I think like trying to approach interviews from a more genuinely curious place will often reveal more information than maybe we could have predicted.
Yeah. Now, as you say that, one thing as I've been reflecting back on, okay, when have I been asked a good question, or when have I noticed like one's been asked in discussion? It's usually someone asks something and there's no immediate response because you can tell people are thinking about it because it's challenging them to think in a different way. There's that silence. So if someone's quick to respond, it's an obvious question, it's an easy question, it's something that it's a knee-jerk reaction. But when they sit back and they're like, I haven't thought about it like that way before. Or they start like, you want them to do this kind of like, especially in the early conversation, like think out loud, get them to talk. You have 27 minutes to fill up, get them to fill that up. So yeah, don't be scared to ask those like non-stereotypical Google, what are the 10 best interview questions? Like I know no one listening to this actually uses those, but to that point, like don't feel intimidated or scared by silence to feel like you have to ask the direct things there.
Yeah, no, and I think like that is such an interesting piece of the puzzle too, is again, from a psychology perspective, like does the candidate feel like if they don't have an answer right away that they're going to look dumb or they're not going to look prepared or something? And so I think like even kind of opening the conversation with like, hey, like these might be questions that are different from ones you've heard in an interview before. Like take your time answering them. Like, the floor is yours. I think positioning it in that way might help create a little bit more of that like comfortability and like vulnerability in the conversation that leads to better answers too. So I really, really love this point in general. I think like good question asking is something that we should all be really pursuing, especially in the age of AI. Our ability to be curious is really what sets us apart from the robots. And so leveraging that at every turn as much as we possibly can, I think is, the competitive advantage and superpower that we all have. So love that point. The final one, this is the one that I have the most kind of maybe pushback on. So curious for your thoughts. So the final point is move as fast as possible once you have the right one. So people want to feel wanted. Time is typically interpreted as disinterest, even if that's not actually accurate. And so he says, in order to kind of reduce that level of fear or friction, move as fast as you possibly can and, give clarity about next steps, et cetera. I think my argument here is I don't think it's as much about speed as it is about really good communication. Speed is something that may or may not be within your control as a recruiter. It might not be something that you have the ability to influence at every single turn. There's going to be factors that you can't control. What are the factors that you can always control? Communication, how well you communicate, how often you communicate. So in my opinion, the real takeaway is every factor that you have control over, you should be using to the best of your ability, to make sure that the candidate knows, like, hey, I know you haven't, like, we haven't had an answer yet. You're still, just making sure that they always feel like they're not waiting for something from you. So I don't know. That's kind of my way of thinking about that one.
I love that. No, it's spot on. I think if you unpack that question and you asked him a hot ones question where he goes, I haven't thought about that way. Yes, why is moving fast as possible important? It's usually to your exact thing there. It's because there's those lulls in between where it's like, okay, I had screening call, now it's a week and a half between that and the next interview. Like, I don't know, are they wishy-washy? Are they not thinking about the role? If you communicate that entire time, they have no problem. So speed, frequency, quality of communication, I fully agree with you there. I would also caveat this with, I think it depends on the role, where if it's one of many, so if this is a one of 20 developers over the course of a year or something, that's different. Because when you have a great person, like, yes, go after them. It's not, risk isn't the right word, but if you're only hiring a role, it's one of one, there's only going to be one person that fits into whatever the specific title could be. Like, that's where communication comes into play, because as a recruiter and as a hiring manager, no, I want to see the range of candidates within here. I don't someone might be great, but if you've only talked to 5 people listening understand the value of that. So I'll plus 100 what you just said there, where it's like move fast with communication.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And have that checkpoint in. Obviously, yes, like when you do have the right person, when they check all boxes, like don't just have 3 weeks in between interviews and everything else. Obvious stuff here, but I think what the point he's trying to get to add to was perfectly explained by you there.
Sweet. Well, those are his 5 tips. Again, those are Jordan Mazur's 5 tips. I will link his LinkedIn post in the show notes so that people can read all of the nitty-gritty details and have a laugh at the way that he's pitched all of this stuff. But curious for people's thoughts on these. Like, do you think that this is a good strategy? Have you seen something different or something similar work? I'm just, curious to see what general feedback is around this. He got a decent amount of, good comments on the post itself, but would be curious to hear from our listeners specifically.
Oh yeah, I love it. And I was just going and scrolling through. I was like, I wonder if there's some good comments in here. I bet there are some good comments. You already said that, so perfect. Yeah. All right, Lex. Well, this was fun. This was a good one to get back into our little rhythm of trending topics with. So appreciate the fun chat there.
Yeah, thanks for sending this my way. It was a fun one.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you like this episode but you're not sure where to go next, we do have a link to a similar one. You can find that within the show notes in the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website. Full video episodes are available on YouTube if you want to see our beautiful faces. If you have a specific question, you're ever looking for advice, send us an email, podcast@loxo.co. And lastly, if you did enjoy this episode, please make sure to leave us a quick rating in your podcast streaming platform. It's going to take you 3 seconds, and it's going to help other recruiters like you to find us. So, all right, everyone, that's a show. That's another great Trending Topics episode with Lex. Until next time, bye, y'all.